And I guess we are live on air. So good morning to all our webinar attendees today. We have about 80 attendees right now, and I guess the numbers are still coming in. So while we're waiting for the rest of our attendees to join us, let me just start with just a few words of introduction and administration. So once again, a very warm welcome to the 11th Jobs and Skills Insights webinar on today's topic, managing employee experience in a high-growth market. My name is Glenn. I'm your moderator for today. Together with me are my colleagues Bilan and Fiona, and we are from the Skills Development Division at Skills Future Singapore. What we at Skills Future Singapore do is to provide all Singaporeans with the opportunities to develop their potential throughout their lives. We believe that the skills, passions, and contributions of each and every individual Singaporean will drive Singapore's next phase of development towards an advanced economy and a more inclusive society. Regardless of which point you are at in your life, you can be sure to find a variety of resources to help you attain skills mastery and make informed decisions to expand your skill set for professional and career development. Now, before we start, allow me to go through some administrative details. This entire webinar will take about 15 minutes. Our speaker for today will be speaking for about 30 minutes, followed by approximately 15 minutes of question and answer. During this webinar, attendees will be muted by default to avoid electronic feedback and interference. If you need help at any time, please send us a message by using the Q&A box at the right side of the screen, which you can see from your console. You may also post questions here for the Q&A session, which we'll be having after the presentation. If we are unable to answer any of the questions during this session, please be assured that we will address them after this webinar. The entire console that you see before you is interactive. You may enlarge or reduce the window sizes, open or close each window by clicking on the buttons at the bottom of your screen. Your feedback is also very important to us, so please kindly fill in the survey at the end of the webinar. This survey can be seen at the rightmost window of your screen right now. This webinar session will be recorded and published on My Skills Future portal, Skills Future Singapore's LinkedIn page, and our YouTube channel. The slides will also be sent to all attendees via email at the end of the session. Now, allow me to introduce our speaker for today. Our speaker today is Mr. Kartik Krishnamurthy, the Managing Director, Asia at Cornerstone OnDemand, a global people development company. Kartik leads the overall growth strategy for Cornerstone OnDemand in Asia and manages Asia's operations, which includes sales, marketing, client success, and alliances. Today's topic on managing employee experience in a high-growth market discusses the concept of high growth in our current day, highly disruptive work environment. We then discuss how employee experience plays a role in building worker capability to adapt in this disruptive era. Thanks to the COVID-19 outbreak, all of us have been experiencing yet another example of disruption that is not only affecting our work, but also affecting our daily lives. So I hope this topic is one that we can all relate to personally, and that we can all take away something from this session. Without further ado, let us welcome Kartik, who will share some insights to manage the employee experience to weave learning and development into work and career. Over to you, Kartik.
Thank you very much, Glenn. Good morning to everybody on this webinar. I really appreciate it, especially on a yet another rainy day on Wednesday. Also, welcome to everybody into phase 2 of our easing within Singapore. As Glenn mentioned, my name is Kartik. I'm the Managing Director for Cornerstone Asia based in Singapore. And it's an honor to be on this webinar with all of you. So as we think about what's happening in our global economy, right? Today, we are living in an age of disruption. And anyone in the business world, even casual observers of it, know that we are living in an era of mass disruption. And obviously, the COVID-19 pandemic is a human crisis, but it also continues to take, a tragic toll on people's lives. Um, there's no denying that it's also acting as a major catalyst for change, whether it's economic, societal, personal, corporate, on a scale that's never been seen before, I guess, since wartime. And the scale of the change and the speed at which this is happening is shining a bright light on the fact that companies are facing a once in a generation shift. And for all the uncertainty about what the future will look like, it's clear that that change, that shift will be digital. In fact, I'm sure a lot of you have already seen this on your LinkedIn feeds. There's a very popular meme going around that neatly encapsulates the tipping point of digital, right? In short, I think people have been asked who is driving your digital transformation strategy. The first two options were your CEO and your chief digital officer. But below that, highlighted in bright colors, right, bright red color, is COVID-19, right? In short, companies and even industries will radically move markets, requiring businesses to shift in ways that they haven't anticipated before. Products and services that you and I were used to using and leveraging even 6 months ago will have to adapt very quickly or will be rendered obsolete. But also, more importantly, it's the job of us as leaders on this call today and people and employees and companies on this call today to ensure that our organizations are adapting to this new change, but more importantly, that we are not leaving our people behind. In fact, at this point, I'd like to actually pose a question to all of you. I'm sure many of you can see the polling question. In view of COVID-19 situation, obviously it had a massive impact on the employee experience overall. I'd like to understand from all of you, what's your business focus as you think about employee experience? Has it increased? Has it reduced? Has it stayed the same? So I'd love for you all to take a few minutes and provide your feedback in terms of where do you think employee experience from business focus plays a role and importance within your respective companies. So I'll take a few seconds, a few minutes to give you this opportunity to give us your response. We're looking at some of the answers coming through at some point. All right. We have about 30% of the attendees, 40% of the attendees. I'll push it to you as audience. You can all see where things are going, where the ticker is going. Interesting that a lot of you have looked at the dramatic increase of employee experience overall as strategic importance. And I think COVID-19, if it's taught anything to us the last few months, it is that employees are critical to what we are trying to get done as a business. All right, we'll give it a few more minutes. All right, let's see what the poll results say. All right, so, all right, look, this is great. I think a lot of you have positioned or actually have given your view on how important it is. And like I said, it's not surprising that obviously a significant portion of you, over 55, almost 60%, have said that it's dramatically increased in terms of the strategic importance you all are placing with regards to employee experience. So thank you very much for your view on that. So as we think about the importance of employee experience, we also realize that yes, we're living in a world of massive disruption, but we're also living in a uniquely human age of work, right? Today's world is extremely different, as I mentioned, 6 months ago, because obviously we're not only seeing a lot of differences in the workplace, but even companies are concerned about the well-being of its people. A lot of companies are increasingly focused on creating a radically different experience for their people at work. They're also seeing that employees are bringing a new set of expectations at work. They're asking the employees to help them on a deeply human level. They're asking for safety. They're looking for trust. They're looking for transparency, social accountability, and more importantly, a purpose for them to grow at work. So as you think about all of this, the question that becomes, what does it mean for all of us, right? These sweeping global forces are obviously reshaping the workplace, the workforce, and the work itself. But we're also seeing a potential of technology and its ability to impact, people's life in a very meaningful way. We have the opportunity to rethink technology from the ground up, and the focus should be more on the individual and the experiences that they have at work. I literally feel that we are at the cusp of a very, very exciting era. And as we think about this era, one of the things that PwC did in a very recent survey, and this survey was done sometime in January of 2020, you will see the significant portion of the top 5 global threats, around overregulation, trade and conflict, uncertain economic growth, cyber threats, etc. So there's a lot of general sentiment around uncertainty, a lot of general sentiment around nervousness amongst our business. However, what you also see in the top 10 threats, and this has been actually in the top 10 for quite a few years, at number 6 is the availability of key skills. At number 8 is the speed of technology change. So obviously, what we're also looking at is that technology continues to power the importance as we think about what are we trying to do for our employees on a daily basis. So as we think about the availability of key skills, right? What I find very interesting is that while the availability of key skills has been a steady rise over the last 10 years, it's also the speed of technology change is also lagging it. So there is a significant impact on businesses overall. It's impacting their innovation. It's also contributing to high employee costs. Because at the end of the day, even if it's a fast change in technology landscape, we need to make sure we're combining it with the availability of key skills, because that gap, the more it becomes bigger, it's going to be even more impactful on our organizations and the ability for us to innovate on a long-term basis. What we're also seeing is obviously, the technology disruption, which is obviously accelerating on a massive scale. As we think about the bygone eras, we are literally in the 4th industrial revolution, and the things and technology, the way they are trending over the past couple of years and will continue to do in the next 5, 10, 15 years, should give us a pause to understand how are we looking at all of these disruptions in technology, how are we looking at all of the acceleration that technology is bringing into our respective organizations, and harness it for the well-being of our employees on a regular basis. So as we think about a lack of availability of key skills, as we think about technology disruption, it's very clear that our companies are in a crisis. COVID-19, global uncertainty, trade wars, trade conflicts, all of that is making a significant impact of how we are thinking about our respective companies. But more importantly, within our organizations, how are we thinking about the skill gaps? How are we thinking about talent shortage? And one of the key things we've also looked at as a result of all of this is that it's created a crisis for people at work. I spend a lot of time talking to senior executives, CHROs, and other C-suite executives, and almost all of them are concerned about their people. We are living in an era of unprecedented high levels of anxiety, high levels of stress, increased disengagement. We're living in an environment where there's significant burnout. In fact, one of Cigna 360's surveys around well-being found that 87% of employees globally are experiencing a burnout in their current jobs. In fact, this number is even higher in Singapore, almost 92%. And obviously, COVID-19 has exacerbated this whole equation around stress, because a lot of our employees are working from home. So they also need to balance the needs of their work and the attention for obviously their work, their children, especially if the children are under VILT, virtual instructor-led training. But we need to make sure we're giving them an environment that allows them to constantly thrive. And we as HR practitioners, HR leaders, we need to be in a position to provide them the opportunities to help them keep up with this pace of change, because literally people are not able to keep up with this level of change. And it's not going to slow down, right? Technology will continue to accelerate. The speed of technology change is continuing to accelerate. The global uncertainty will continue to accelerate. So we need to make sure that we as a business are ready, as an industry are ready for this change, because we know that this is going to be here as the new norm. So the question becomes, what do we do? We need to look at focusing on cultivating adaptive humans more than adjusting to the change. We need to cultivate adaptive humans who are confident in navigating the continuous change to keep growing. It is more important right now for us to have the ability to adjust rather than just respond to change. It's our attitude to change, our willingness to drive change externally, and us, more important, even ourselves on a daily basis. So one of the studies that I found very fascinating from Mercer's 2018 global talent trend, and I highly encourage you all to look at this. A lot of us, in many regards, the way we are adapting today is we're conducting ourselves in our businesses right now with regards to surviving, right? And it is the need of the hour, because many of our businesses, especially if you're in hospitality, if you're in retail, if you're in business services, if you're in transportation, the need of the hour is to survive. But the question is, what do we do? How do we evolve so that we move from surviving to thriving? So how can we help our people, our organizations? Because most organizations today are still operating in a fixed operating and people model. And they really haven't developed the organization capability to be agile as the world demands, So it's not surprising that in these fixed business environments, we see low levels of engagement, of innovation. And it's only helping us survive. Like I said, it is important today, but I'm always someone who's glass half full, and I do believe we will come out of this crisis. So the question is, as we come out of this crisis, how are we enabling our organizations to move from surviving organizations to thriving organizations? I'd like to actually take a pause here and give you another polling exercise. As you think about your respective companies, whether you're operating within Singapore, in ASEAN, across Asia, or even globally, I would love to understand what best describes the state of your organization right now. Now, are you in a survival mode, fighting until the situation improves? Are you pivoting and changing your business model? Opportunities because you've been able to make that pivot. So I'd love to pause for a few seconds and see a few minutes and see where you are with regards to your respective companies. Right, the poll numbers are coming in. Wow. It's interesting. The difference between some of the answers is fascinating, even though we only have about 40% of you have just answered, but looks like right now majority of you are in the pivoting mode. It talks about changing your business model, which is great. I'm assuming the folks who are in the survival mode, fighting it up until situation improves. I won't be surprised if you're in one of the industries that has been massively impacted because of the global uncertainty, whether it's hospitality, transportation, business services, retail. I'll give it a few more minutes. And thank you all for your thoughts on the poll. All right. We have about 60% of folks who have answered. Look, I think it's very, very heartening to see that a lot of you on this call, like I mentioned, almost 54%, 55% of you are in the pivoting mode and changing your business model, which is exactly where you want to be. As you think about your people, as you think about the skill that your people have today, how do you pivot quickly to capture the opportunities? Because when we come out of this pandemic, these global uncertainty, you want to be in the last section, which is thriving and capturing opportunities and getting productive as much as you can. So thank you, everybody, for providing your thoughts and feedback on what best describes your organization right now. So just coming back to the study from Mercer, obviously as we think about surviving versus changing versus thriving, a significant portion of what our organizations have thought about traditionally is we relied on this whole concept of IQ, or capacity of knowledge, as a measurement for high skill and high perceived value. IQ inherently causes people to resist change because it means they're no longer an expert, right? Change is a threat for them. But as we think about focusing and starting to focus on EQ, or the capacity for emotional mastery, right? EQ helps people react to change, to deal with it, but it's still a very reactive stance. They can handle change better, but it's still not at its optimal relationship, with change. Looking forward, we need to think about how do we develop what's called adaptive quotient, or AQ, or a high capacity of change. We need to look for ways to continuously learn, take risks, embrace change, experiment, be curious, continuously learn. Because when people gain confidence in themselves, and engage with not just themselves, but even each other, it becomes a more proactive relationship with change, right? So adaptive quotient enables people to embrace and expect change as a place of opportunity within their respective organizations. So a lot of times, a lot of companies have asked us, what are the key traits, what are the characteristics of folks who have high AQ or adaptive quotient? As we think about our respective organizations, and as we think about the transition from surviving to changing to thriving, some of the key characteristics we found of people who are in the thriving organization are optimism, right? Folks who are generally optimistic about not just the current state, but even the future. They're curious. Their mindset is one of curiosity. They're very resilient. They're able to rebound and recover from change. They come to the organization or have a beginner's mindset. The Zen Buddhist term, welcome the world with open mind, without bias, right? They look at celebrating failure. In fact, one of the key things about organizations is to create a culture where you are enabling people to celebrate failure. They're highly resourceful people. They're finding ways to be more creative, to be able to solve their problems in a different way. So as we think about the need to empower people and find new ways to help empower people, we also need to look at, with the traits that we talked about, what are the other things we can do for organizations, right? How else can we help them overcome this pace of change and prepare them for the new future? So what if technology could help them, right? What if technology could help people create or build adaptive quotient? What if we could help augment the ways we change our abilities at work? And those are some of the critical questions that organizations are constantly asking. The problem today is, as an industry, while we are focusing on organization performance, as we are focused on all of the technology that helps to improve organization performance, we have unfortunately left our people behind. And this particular slide, it really resonates for me. I think a lot of you on this webinar will also look at this and say it makes sense. If you look at the brief history of our industry, the HR technology industry, I'm sure many of you have been part of this journey, over time. So in the 2000s, we were highly focused on automation. Previous manual processes, whether it's recruiting, performance, learning, and the whole concept was how do we optimize HR? How do we squeeze cost out of it and make the HR jobs more fulfilling and less manual and administrative? We then started to understand that technology can help unify some of these processes in a very meaningful way. So we no longer had silos of learning and performance and succession and compensation as separate, distinct business processes, because it was all part of one. It was all about managing the supply and demand of talent to meet the ever-needing changes of business. So we then had an era and dawn of talent management and unified talent management. The next phase around 5-7 years ago, we saw this whole advent of engagement, right? How can we measure engagement in a very meaningful way and drive engagement within our workforce? So we started to see this proliferation of point solutions around employee engagement by some of these very large software vendors. But what I'm excited about is where we're going next. It's the era of experience. How can we look holistically at the experience of our employees at work and make a meaningful impact in their day-to-day lives? And the good news is, while we are focused as an industry, as an HR organization, as a company, as a business, on the whole gamut of automation, integration, engagement, our employees have already taken a couple of steps ahead of us. They've already looked at consumer technologies in their personal lives and how it augments them within their respective work lives. Right? So if you look at this timeline, and obviously a lot of you, whether it was in phase 1 of the circuit break or even some of you in phase 2, think about a typical day and how it flows. So I'm going to ask you, as you thought about your morning and how it started, if you're like me, I woke up at 5:30 in the morning, obviously using my alarm, looked at some news, looked at what's happening around the world, whether it's COVID-19 cases increase or other general macroeconomic trends. I went for a run in the morning. Unfortunately, it was raining, so in the gym, used some of my virtual apps to track my workout. Then came back home, right? And then got into my Zoom calls or my WebEx meetings. And if you have kids who are at school or working from or studying from home, getting them on their VILTs. Towards the afternoon, many of you will order Grab, Deliveroo, etc. for your lunch. And then towards the evening, if you're looking at relaxing, listening to your favorite music on Spotify or binge watching something on Netflix or Amazon Prime, etc., etc. Why am I saying this? The reason I'm saying this is because our employees are already there. The question is, how are we following them and helping them provide them opportunities in the flow of their work and the flow of their daily lives? And the good news is, as Cornerstone, we've already been thinking about this for quite some time, right? We're thinking about this as a journey which is frictionless. We're thinking about this as something that's personalized, contextualized to the work experiences, and increasingly looking at effective engagement within your respective employee base. So what does that mean? So as we think about frictionless, it means providing content and transactions and knowledge that needs to come to your employees. We can't assume that your people will stop and take their time out of their busy work, log into the learning portals and learn. It's not going to happen. We need to bring technology, we need to bring content to our people where they are working and help them learn in the flow of work. Personalized. All the apps on our phones are highly personalized based on your history and how you've interacted with them in the past few months or few years. Same with our people. Our people are different. No two employees are the same. Some of our employees like to spend 2 hours learning, some 15 minutes, some on the go. Some prefer videos, some articles. So we need to make sure we're delivering a personalized experience for our employees. So when they're connecting with other employees across the region globally, they're able to improve their collaboration and be more productive. And last but not the least, relevancy, right? It's very, very important that we are providing things that are relevant to who they are, to their job profiles, to their job, what they're doing today, but also look at relevancy in terms of where they want to go as future employees within your organization. So as we think about the whole concept of talent experience, one of the things that we also looked at was around the whole vision of talent management versus talent experience, right? Bringing these two distinct lenses together. Look, talent management, is not going away, but talent experience is an additional layer, a lens that we as an organization, as Cornerstone, we are building on top of talent management. Many of you will ask, what is talent management, right? Talent management it's table stakes. It's a unified, holistic business function. It's not individual piece and parts and processes, because when you speak to your CEO, your CFO, and your senior executives, I'm sure they never talk about HR processes. They are talking about, how do I attract top talent faster from the competition? How do I identify key scarce skills in the marketplace? How do I create diverse talent pools? And how do you retain your best people, move fast, and all of this at a much lower cost, right? It's all about looking at not in the fixed business model, but how do you look at your organization from a fixed to a surviving to a thriving business model. Talent experience, on the other hand, is very, very important, especially in the, all of you have said, over 60% of you have said that, employee experience or talent experience is extremely important. And research actually proves it, because there are 4 basic things that people are looking for from their work or their employer. Number 1, how do I develop my skills continuously so that I can stay relevant in an ever-changing world, not just in my current job, but what's coming in the future? What's my clear path to success? What's expected of me? How am I doing in my current role, and how do I improve? That was number 2. People are asking this on a global basis, because as the pace of work changes, as business change, one of the top things that almost every company is looking for in the employee surveys is, where are we going? And what's expected of me, and how am I going to get there? Number 3, they also want to be seen and included. Their voices want to be heard without bias. They don't want to be another, cog in the wheel. And last but not least, most importantly, work-life simplicity, right? I'm sure many of you thought, technology is going to make your life much easier. It's going to make it less complex. Guess what? It's not, right? It's become even more complex. So simplification has become the holy grail. So we know that both talent management and talent experience or employee experience are more important at the same time. So we at Cornerstone will continue to work with all of you as we think about solutions, and we think about products to help you and help your organization, but more importantly, help you with the needs of your employees on a daily basis. So as we think about talent experience, we didn't think about it from a software solution perspective, right? We think about it as the micro moments that an employee looks at on a daily basis through their journey within an organization. And we look at all of that and embed it within our respective products or solutions, because we know that an employee journey is not linear. It's not streamlined. It's a multi-dimensional process, a multi-dimensional way for them to look at exploring their career. It's about the development opportunities. They're looking at how do we explore options of where they may go next. It's about tailoring these individual micro moments that are important to the careers of your talent within a respective organization, right? When they join your company, for example, it's not about just onboarding basics, but it's things such as, who do I know? Are there people I've worked with in this company? Who can I connect with? What are the common interests I have? Right? It could also be things such as, I'm a first-time manager, so help me, because we know that as a first-time manager, how daunting it can be to manage other people, and they cannot get it wrong. They also want to know that, hey, I'm doing something for the very first time. I like to get some feedback so I can learn from my mistakes and evolve in a very rich way. So we look for these micro moments, and we incorporate them into all of our products and solutions so that we look at it from a holistic, meaningful, personalized, and contextualized manner for our employees and our talent. Lastly, the true belief of Cornerstone is, we believe that people can achieve anything when they have the right development opportunities. We call it fulfilling the potential of our employees. Like I said, we will come out of this environment, this current environment, in a much healthier, stronger way. And we will want to position ourselves as thriving organizations, right? Organizations that are ready to capture the next wave of growth and productivity. So the key for us as leaders, as employees of this organization, is to ensure that we are focusing on our talent. As the late, great Steve Jobs once said, right, the number one driver for long-term shareholder value is talent. So once again, thank you for your time. Stay safe, stay healthy, and look forward to answering some of your questions on this webinar. Glenn, over to you.
Thank you, Kartik, for that sharing. Right. So we will now take questions from the audience. I hope this sharing has been useful to you. And we realize that probably you need a bit of time to digest what was shared and try to make sense of it for yourself. Whenever you're ready, feel free to just type in your questions in the Q&A window on the interface. We'll be waiting for it. Mm-hmm. Right. While we're waiting for the questions to come in, Kartik, maybe just one question from me to you first. Given what you shared about the transition of organizations from a changing company to a thriving company, do you think we need to change the way we think about and approach skills training to cater for AQ?
Absolutely. Thank you for that question, Glenn. So look, I think as we think about AQ and some of the traits we talked about in AQ, whether it's optimism, resilience, beginner's mindset, curiosity, there are two ways of looking at it, right? So number one is we as leaders, as companies, have the responsibility to create an environment where employees that we have in our organization are able to leverage some of those traits. Because without that culture, without that foundation, it'll be very, very hard for someone to say, hey, I failed in this particular project, and now I may feel that there may be a backlash with regards to why I failed, etc. So, number one, as leaders, we need to make sure that we are able to provide that level of that culture within these organizations. Secondly, as we think about reskilling and skilling, one of the key things that we looked at was a lot of the organizations have talked about the importance and the importance of having some of these AQ traits. Can it be taught? Can it be, do people come with it? I think while hard skills are extremely important, and a lot of organizations are looking at providing that to the employees, it's these soft skills that require continued development, things such as active listening, a purposeful inquiry of the employees. And I think a lot of our leaders, as we think about leading with empathy, especially in this environment, it's all well and good that we talk about leading with empathy, but it's another thing about how do we effectively apply it during real life situations like the one we're facing today. So I think to answer your question, it is extremely important as we think about reskilling and upskilling that we create an environment that our employees are able to look at some of those traits and are able to capture them during the course of the work. And I think as managers, we also need to go through a significant amount of skills training in this area so that when our employees are coming to us, when our employees are asking us for continuous feedback on some projects that may not have gone the right way, when our employees are asking us about doing different things within the organization that provides more value to the company, we are encouraging them to do some of these things. So I think it's a mix of the culture that we as organizations need to build, but us as leaders that will enable and encourage our employees to think about the traits that we talked about under the AQ umbrella.
Okay. Thanks, Kartik, for that. Okay, it looks like the questions are starting to come in. Let's take another one now. So, with the COVID situation, how can organizations continue to engage staff through talent experience journey remotely?
Yeah, look, that's a really good question because it's something that even I used to wrestle with when we first started all working from home. Look, COVID it's unfortunate. At least in Singapore, we will continue to work from home even for a foreseeable future if we can. And I think we should. What's important as managers is that we need to ensure that we are in constant communication with our employees. So I'll give you an example. At Cornerstone, when I speak to my team across Asia, and I have a massive, broad region that my business covers, I make it a point that when I'm talking to them, it's on video, right? I look at them in the eye, I see where they are, I see the environment, and I always want to understand what's happening into day-to-day lives, right? It's not about just jumping into business or asking about a latest project, but just understanding how they are feeling within their respective geographies, markets, etc. So I think just doing the basics, being in constant communication with your employees, try and do video as much as you can. If you can, it doesn't always have to be sitting on your desk. If you can go for a walk, and you're allowed to go for a walk because of your local regulations, go for a walk and do it over video. But look at them, have a conversation with them. The other things you can also do is small little things. Send them something that they feel nice about themselves. They've done a good job in a particular project. If you have the whole concept of badges or gamification, recognize them in front of their peers. Or if you want to just send them small things such as 12 cupcakes. These are the micro moments that your employees will remember, especially when they are working from home. They're not looking at you or dealing with you on a day-to-day basis. They will remember these micro moments of how you, as a manager, as a leader, took interest in their well-being.
Thanks again, Kartik. Okay, so we have another question here. So, as you know, in Singapore's skills narrative, one of the elements is about skills adjacency and cross-sector recognition, right, of different skills. So, how can we integrate this into the employee experience?
Yeah, great question. Look, I think oftentimes we get confused between reskilling and upskilling, right? And so, if I hear the question correctly, it sounds a little bit more around the whole concept of reskilling, a necessary, for lack of a better word, doing an about face, right? Because what reskilling involves is training your employees on an entirely new set of skills to prepare them to take on a different role within your company. And this typically occurs when people or workers or employees and their previous tasks or responsibilities may have become irrelevant because of advances in technology, automation, or even because of the lack of demand for their current services. So I'll give you two examples. Last year, one of Cornerstone's largest clients globally, Amazon, decided to retrain 100,000 of their workers and put them on a relevant career path in the face of automation. So what Amazon decided was, because of automation, because of robotics, they said, we don't want to let go of these 100,000 workers. They are a valuable asset to our company, and it's because of them that we've grown to the size we are today. So what they said was, okay, we're going to look at all these employees, and then, for example, factory warehouse floor workers were reskilled and provided opportunities to look at potential roles as IT technicians. Low-level coders within their organization were transitioned into what's called data scientists. So organizations like Amazon, reskilling allows businesses to retain your talent, your number one asset, and minimize turnover by investing in employee growth. Another example, and unfortunately I can't take the name of a company, it provides software services predominantly to the transportation industry, predominantly in the aerospace, the airline industry. But they also have a very small business around medical devices. So one of the things they did was they looked at about 3,000 of the employees, and majority of them providing these services to the transportation aerospace. and they started reskilling them to serve their clients in the medical devices. So as companies started to pivot to building ventilators, for example, or new test kits for COVID-19 swab tests, a lot of their clients moved into, obviously the demand for medical devices went up. So they didn't want to lose 3,000 employees or lay off a significant portion of their employees. They wanted to pivot them, provide them the skill sets, obviously leveraging some of our content, our products from Cornerstone, and pivoted them to helping to serve the needs of another industry which they traditionally hadn't placed too much of importance. So look, I think it's up to us as we think about reskilling and providing your employees an opportunity, especially in the environment in Singapore, as the government, as the organization are trying to move away from traditional businesses to high-tech industries within the country.
Thanks, Kartik. So I think this will be a good opportunity as well for me to just chime in a little bit from SSG's perspective. So for our webinar attendees today, if any of you are still not yet aware, SSG, we have published the Singapore Skills Framework, which is a list of resources on various job profiles and technical skills required for those jobs. So that may be one possible tool that you might find useful in working on skills and gaps identification within your company. We are also working on more interactive tools to make these resources a little more user-friendly. And yeah, more information will be made available about these tools in time to come. Okay, wow, looks like we have been seeing a lot of questions coming in as we were discussing these last few. So
yeah,
I think maybe let's just keep on this current train of thought, right? Since we were talking about skills adjacency and skills. So moving on to another focus, which is basically the necessary soft skills which you discussed earlier, things like resiliency, curiosity, optimism. So based on your experience, how do you train and inculcate such skills, right? Knowing that, bearing in mind basically that they're actually a bit more attitudinal rather than technical skills in that sense?
Yep. No, good question. Look, I think it's two ways. It's just not training your general employee population. It's also, providing your leaders the necessary skills to do so, as I mentioned earlier, right? So, obviously we know that, the rate of technology is advancing at an incredible pace, and obviously a lot of companies are investing in their employees to pick up these new skills. But one of the things that we also saw, in fact, Cornerstone did a study called building an adaptive workforce. And in that, they talked about, 83% of employees, we looked at a company, say, of 1,000 employees, we surveyed them, they said that it is essential for them to not just improve their hard skills, but also their professional skills. So as we thought about the professional skills, one of the studies we also saw from Gallup was significant portion of these employees, when they go to their managers, they're looking at their managers to say, help me to build some of these skill sets within my organization. So I think, yes, we have to provide the necessary soft skills for our general population, but I think it's very, very important because, we want to make sure that as these employees speak to the managers, the engagement levels with their managers is also at a high time, at a really high level. So to answer the question directly, the ways we can do that is, number one, like I mentioned earlier, building a culture of enabling these employees to take these risks, right? So if I'm an employee in an organization where I'm doing a project for the very first time, and the project doesn't go in the direction as we all anticipated, he or she should not have the repercussions or be penalized of that. In fact, it's up to the manager, this employee, and the broader team to say, okay, what went wrong? Right? What can we learn from what went wrong in this particular project? Are there things that we can tweak? Are there any levers we can pull that can help us improve? And then try it again, right? Just doing one thing at one time, it doesn't give you enough empirical data to say it's a failure. But we need to create that culture, and it's up to managers to help put that culture in place so employees don't bear it. Secondly, we also need to provide our managers the ability to listen, and what we call purposeful inquiry and active listening. So we want to make sure that our managers are actively listening to what are the needs of our employees, what are they wrestling with on a day-to-day basis, whether it's the whole concept of working from home or they are struggling with a certain project because all of the employees are remote and it's very hard for them from a time zone perspective to complete that particular project. So, as employees and as managers, it's very, very important that we just don't focus on the general talent population, but we also are focusing on building some of these soft skills, which are extremely important in our managers, so that at the end of the day, the two come together to make a meaningful impact.
Yeah, interesting insight there. So, okay, I think we have time for another one or two questions. So there is a question here. What strategies are recommended to simplify lifestyle for employees in high people contact professions?
Can you repeat that, Glenn? Sorry, what strategies?
What strategies are recommended to simplify lifestyle for employees in high people contact professions, for example, education?
Yeah, look, I think the education sector is one of those sectors that's absolutely ripe for change, right? So I would say education and healthcare are the two sectors that traditionally over the last, I would say, couple of decades, if not more, have just not changed. For those who haven't, I would highly recommend there is a podcast called Pivot with Professor Scott Galloway, the professor from NYU Stern School of Business, talks about the need for change in the education sector. Look, education is going to be highly disrupted. And I say this because as we think about the tier one education sector, we're looking at your Harvards and your Yales of the world. They obviously have what's called the significant market brand presence, right? Because they are the likes of Chanel and Hermes, and obviously that brand is always sought after. But education in general, you will see, and what we're going to see is a lot of technology organizations now coming into the education and completely disrupting it. So for organizations, for institutions that are charging $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 for an MBA or for a degree, you're going to be seeing that cost or the diminishing returns of paying $40,000 for a degree over, say, a Zoom meeting. So I would say, for education sectors, you would need to pivot to technology significantly. You would need to think about virtual instructor-led training because the experience of a campus is going to be very, very different for your students coming into your institutions. You would also want to think about what are the other ways that you can make not just your students' lives easy or simplified, but also your professors' academic profession. So, some of the things that some of our education clients are looking at is, pushing out more micro-learning opportunities to their students, especially students who have a different way of learning, looking at more creative ways of building content that resonates with students, that is personalized, because your students are using Spotify, they're using Netflix. It's personalized to who they are, and we will need to do the same. So I think it'll be a combination of a variety of things that we need to do. And if we don't, many of these education institutions are going to see, and we've already seen it, right? For example, Purdue MBA, they just canceled all of 2020. They're not going to take any MBA students anymore, just because the demand for their MBA class has significantly gone down. So we need to be a little bit more creative as education institutions and leverage technology as much as we can to make lives of our students as well as of our academic staff much easier.
Okay, so maybe just one last question before we end off the session. So, I think still related to this, the idea about education. So this COVID pandemic has significantly impacted the way businesses operate. How do you try to reskill employees and motivate them to take on new roles rather than to be made redundant? Even with the global economy, many employees are still having fixed mindsets and refusing to relearn and retrain. So I guess one way we can look at this is, how can the employee experience paradigm help in this particular area, do you think?
Yeah, look, I think this is a philosophical question, and I think there are some there's some people who just don't want to. They don't want to be retrained. They don't want to be reskilled. But at the end of the day, the question will remain is, how do you see these employees within your organization? Do you still see them, as a pivotal part of your overall asset as a talent within the company, right? Have you had the conversation with them and asked them, why do they not want to go through that process? If there's something else that's where the whole question of IQ versus EQ versus AQ comes. If it's predominantly IQ, they will be very resistant to change. They will not, because for them, their intellectual quotient is for the job here and now. They've learned the skills for the job here and now. So the question for us is to understand, how do we move them through that scale of IQ to EQ to AQ? And it's up to us as leaders to have that conversation, discussion with them. This is not a silver bullet. Not everybody is going to come to the other side of this equation. There would be, unfortunately, some really hard questions and hard decisions to be made. But I would say before those hard decisions are made, it's up to us as leaders, as HR leaders or managers on this call, to have that discussion with that employee to understand, what's stopping them, what's the resistance for them to change. And if there's something that you can find out and you can remove that obstacle, that resistance, show them the path. Warehouse workers in Amazon's warehouse, I'm sure majority of them would have looked at this and said, really, IT from what I used to do? But they saw a clear path to what their future is going to look like, and it's up to us to communicate that as clearly as possible.
Thank you, Kartik. Okay, so I guess we have come to the end of this particular webinar session. Very grateful to you, Kartik, and your colleagues for joining us this afternoon to share your insights and address some of the questions posed. So, as mentioned earlier, the questions that we were not able to answer, we will address them offline, and we will send a follow-up with everyone who's attended today to address all the questions as best we can. So, to all our webinar attendees, I hope you had a good takeaway from this session. We would also like to encourage you to join us in our subsequent webinars, as we will be sharing on different topics every month. We would also appreciate it greatly if you could share with us your thoughts on the topics you'd like us to discuss in future webinars. And before we close, I would like to invite you to take a quick survey. Your feedback, which will be kept confidential, is very important to us and will help us improve our future webinars to serve you better. As I mentioned earlier, the link, well, not so much a link, but the evaluation survey questions can be found in a window on the rightmost section of your screen, unless you've moved it. So we would appreciate if you could just take a couple of minutes just to help us fill that up before we leave today. If you're interested to find out more about more initiatives that SkillsFuture has, please refer to this link that you see on the slides to our enterprise portal for jobs and skills on the screen. We hope you will join us again in our upcoming webinars. Starting next month, we will be looking to introduce thematic topics into our webinar series, where we will attempt to dive deeper into the selected themes over a few months. For the past 6 months, we have discussed a number of global trends and their impacts on jobs and skills. So, starting in July, our first thematic topic will shift our focus to learning and skills development in order to respond to these global trends. I would like to also share with you that we have a special webinar session scheduled sometime in July, and this session will be conducted by our own SSG interns, where they will share on the impact of COVID-19 on the job market for fresh graduates or graduating students. This is a special webinar session that will be conducted by students and for students about to enter the workforce. So if you would like to have more details about this session to share with any of your friends or relatives who might benefit from this, do let us know as well. Today's session will be hosted on My SkillsFuture portal, SSG's LinkedIn page, and also SSG's YouTube channel. The slides will be sent to you via email in the next few days, along with the Q&A questions that we could not address today. Once again, my name is Glenn, and together with my colleagues Bilal and Fiona, we want to thank Kartik and the Cornerstone OnDemand team for their support today. And to close off, I'd just like to wish everyone to stay safe and stay healthy. See you all next month. Thank you.
Thank you.